am Bathsheba, and this is my story. Not the one you might have heard in whispers or read in ancient records. No, this is my story. The one nobody bothered to ask for. The one told by me, not about me. From a young age, I was known as the Beautiful One. People would remark on it, sometimes as a blessing, other times as though it were a curse. My grandfather, Ahithophel, was among the wisest men in Israel, a counselor to kings. My father, Eliam, served with honor among the elite soldiers. I was born into privilege and position, raised to know my worth, my duties, and the importance of dignity in our family. But it wasn't only a legacy of honor that my family passed down. My lineage was heavy with expectation, a weight I felt even before I could understand it. There is peace in knowing who you are and where you belong. I had that once, before everything changed. As a child, I never questioned my future. Life unfolded in predictable rhythms. The daily routines, family gatherings, festivals and prayers. Growing up in Jerusalem meant that the temple was always within view, and its shadow often felt like a shield, a protector. The holiness of God's presence watched over our city, and to me it felt like a certainty that nothing could disturb. My early years were simple, though by no means ordinary. I was taught the traditions of our people, the wisdom of our elders, and the respect for the law that guided every action in Israel. My father and grandfather emphasized these principles with a fierceness that left an indelible mark on my soul. And then there was Uriah, my husband, my love, a man loyal to his people and his king. When I was old enough, I was given in marriage to Uriah. He was a Hittite, a foreigner by birth, but an Israelite in his heart, strong, honorable, and respected by all. Uriah embodied everything a young woman could hope for. He was a soldier, but more than that, he was a man of profound faith. In every battle, his loyalty to Israel and to God was unshakable. And in every moment with me, he was patient, kind, and steadfast. Our marriage was not merely a union of two people. It was a covenant before God, a bond that both thrilled and humbled me. I cherished my role as his wife. While his duty often took him to distant battlefields, I found peace in the rhythm of our shared life. I would wait for him, praying each time he left that God would guard him and bring him back safely. When I think back to those days, the city was alive with stories of battles and victories. David, the shepherd king, the giant slayer, was admired, even revered. Little did I know how this man's life would come crashing into mine. Jerusalem was my home, a city vibrant with life and faith. King David's reign had brought prosperity and security to our people, and he was celebrated not just as a king, but as a man after God's own heart. He was our protector, our warrior, the very symbol of Israel's strength. But as seasons changed and wars continued, the talk in the city turned from the excitement of victory to the fear of losing beloved fathers, husbands, and sons. The sacrifices were felt deeply by those of us waiting, praying, lighting candles, hoping for peace, but knowing that battles were ever near. For me, those were days of both faith and dread. I knew that every departure might be the last, that every farewell could be the final one. Yet, there was a strength in me, born of tradition, honor, and faith, that kept me resilient, even as Uriah departed time and again, bound by his loyalty to the king and the kingdom. And then came the night that shattered my world, a night I still see clearly, even through the mists of time. It was a warm evening, the kind that carries whispers through the air. Uriah was away, as he so often was, and I found myself alone, taking a quiet moment under the open sky. The city was still, and I felt a peace that came from the heavens. I had no reason to believe that my life was about to be irrevocably changed, that the gaze of the king would find me, that I was about to become entangled in a story that would shape the future of Israel. This story is one that history has often told differently, but today I invite you to hear it from my own heart, from my perspective. If you're captivated by this journey and want to uncover the mysteries hidden in our scriptures, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Sit back, as there's so much more to unfold, and you won't want to miss it. It was a night like any other. I remember standing under the open sky, feeling the breeze on my skin, unaware of the eyes watching me. It was an evening filled with quiet solitude, the air thick with the scent of jasmine, as I stood on the rooftop, my mind lost in thoughts of Uriah. My heart felt heavy with the familiar ache of longing, and I found comfort in the stillness of the night. Then a sudden knock shattered the silence. One of the king's messengers stood at my door. He wore a solemn expression, his eyes avoiding mine, as he conveyed the king's request. I was to come to the palace immediately. Confusion, worry, curiosity, they all swirled within me, but I did not hesitate. After all, this was the king's command, and who was I, the wife of a humble soldier, to refuse? As I made my way to the palace, the familiar streets took on an eerie quality, shadows stretching longer than I remembered. What could the king possibly want from me? When I entered his chambers, I saw not the king, but a man, gazing at me with an intensity that left me breathless and frightened. The room was dimly lit, and there he stood, King David, the man our people adored, the warrior who sang psalms and conquered enemies. His gaze was unwavering, a mixture of admiration and something darker, something that made my heart race. He spoke softly, his words as gentle as the touch of a feather, yet his eyes betrayed a depth of desire that I had not expected. I felt torn, flattered, frightened, confused. Here was the king, a man revered for his closeness to God, looking at me with such intensity that I could hardly breathe. I told myself it was nothing, that he would honor the sanctity of marriage, the boundaries set by the law. Yet, in that moment, I felt myself slipping, my resolve crumbling. My mind screamed at me to leave, yet my feet remained rooted to the ground. He spoke to me of beauty, of fate, of the mystery that had drawn us together that night. His words were laced with charm, with a dangerous allure that felt as captivating as it was destructive. When dawn broke, I was no longer the woman I once was. My world had shifted in a way that could never be undone. Leaving the palace was like walking through a nightmare. My heart was heavy with guilt, with the knowledge that I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I was a married woman, loyal to my husband, yet in one night, everything had changed. I returned to my home, hoping that no one would notice, praying that the shame I felt would be buried in the quiet of the morning. But within me, there was no peace. 1,000 questions plagued my mind. How could David, a man after God's own heart, do this? And how could I, Bathsheba, allow it? Days turned into weeks, and each day I felt the weight of what I had done pressing down on me, crushing my spirit. I avoided the stares of the townspeople, afraid they would somehow know the secrets that lay hidden in my heart. But my torment was not merely emotional, it was physical as well. I soon realized that I was with child. The moment I knew, I felt my entire world a tilt, a burden heavier than any I had ever carried. There was no hiding it now. The truth would emerge with or without my consent, and it was a truth that would ruin me and, more devastatingly, Uriah. I could not bear the thought of him knowing the shame I had brought upon him. With a pounding heart and trembling hands, I sent word to the king. This was no ordinary sin. It was one that would demand an answer, one that could destroy not just lives but reputations, loyalties, and perhaps even a kingdom. In my heart, I hoped that the king, a man of such renown, such wisdom, would know what to do, would find a way to right this wrong. Little did I know that my confession would set in motion a tragedy that would change everything. When David learned of my condition, he did not respond with anger or shame. Instead, his mind seemed to work quickly, crafting a plan, a solution. He sent for Uriah, summoning him from the battlefield. And my heart dared to hope that David sought to reconcile us, to ease this pain. But instead, David urged Uriah to return home to me, to lay down his arms and rest. He hoped Uriah would be with me, that the timing would cover the truth, that the child would be seen as his own. Yet, to my surprise, and perhaps David's, Uriah was too loyal, too honorable. He refused to indulge in comfort while his comrades fought on the battlefield. I watched in silent torment as David's plan unraveled, knowing that each failed attempt brought us closer to a darker, unthinkable outcome. Desperate, David then did the unthinkable. He ordered Uriah's return to the front lines, but this time with a command, one that was delivered to Joab, the commander of the army. Uriah was to be placed where the battle was fiercest, and he was to be abandoned there. And so, the man I loved, the man whose only sin was his loyalty, was condemned to death by the very king he served. When the news came, I felt as though the world itself had shattered. My husband, my beloved Uriah, was gone, and it was because of me. When the news reached me, I fell to the ground, crushed beneath the weight of grief and guilt. My mind reeled, trapped between anguish and disbelief. How could it be that my life, which had once been filled with honor and love, had now become a tale of betrayal and death? David took me in as his wife soon after, and while the people saw this as an act of kindness, a gesture of honor toward a fallen soldier's widow, I knew the truth. This was not honor. This was concealment. The king had sought to erase a sin by committing an even graver one, and I was bound to him now, forever part of his dark secret. And so, there I was, caught in the web of choices that had been made for me, yet bearing the weight of their consequences on my own shoulders. David's heart may have been in conflict, but mine was breaking. As the days passed, the palace corridors that once held whispers of power and ambition now echoed with the silent cries of regret, and I was left to navigate this newfound life, bound to a king, yet haunted by the memory of my lost love, Uriah. With every passing day, I felt the heavy gaze of the people, the hushed murmurs, the judgment, the shame. Yet within the depths of my sorrow, a quiet resolve began to take root, a seed of purpose that would one day blossom. But I didn't know it then. I didn't know the twists of fate, the redemption still ahead, or the rise of a son who would reshape the future of Israel. In the shadows of my despair, a new chapter was waiting to unfold, a chapter that would transform a broken woman into a queen, a grieving mother into a counselor, and a woman once shamed into a figure of enduring wisdom. This, my friends, is only the beginning of my journey. There is so much more to tell, so much more to reveal. If you think you've seen the darkest side of this tale, just wait. In part 2, we will journey further into the depths of David's palace, the throne's hidden secrets, and the rise of a legacy that would outshine all shame. So watch this space, dear friends, and prepare to see a tale of redemption, power, and wisdom like no other. I am Bathsheba, and my story is only just beginning. If you're gripped by this story, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There is so much more to uncover, and I can't wait to share it with you. Stay tuned for part 2.